G'day and welcome back to the channel. Now, this video is not designed for my usual audience. My usual audience are people who fly drones, model aircraft and similar craft in the air. But today I want to talk to pilots. I want to talk to the pilots of manned aircraft because I want to talk about the issue of drones and the risk they pose to manned aviation and how we get around this problem. Now, if you read the media or watch the media, you'll see an increasing number of stories where drones and manned aircraft have come into close proximity and there's been near misses and risks to people's lives, apparently, so we're told. And it has to be admitted that this has happened. If we look at footage on the media, we can see there's been some horrendously close calls between drones and manned aircraft. One of the interesting things is that most of these near misses have happened at fairly low altitudes. There have been reports of drones at 30,000 feet, but that's pretty unlikely, and often those reports turn out to be something completely different when they're properly investigated. But the big risk to a manned aviation is the chance of hitting a drone at 500 feet and below. And that also applies to bird strikes. Bird strikes are far more common at these lower altitudes. And in this Florida incident, which occurred recently, notice that the helicopter was flying along the coastline. Now, a coastal area, you're more likely to find someone flying a drone there because it's scenic, it's picturesque. And also you're more likely to find birds there, marine birds, gulls, even albatrosses and things like that along a shoreline. So it seems to me rather odd that someone would fly so low over an area like that. But hey, what I want to talk about now is regulation. And we've seen the FAA, CAA in the UK and in New Zealand, CASA, Transport Canada, all these regulatory authorities trying to come up with rule sets that will help reduce the risk that is associated with people flying drones in the national airspace. And so far, it seems to have been pretty ineffective. Now, if we look at the incident report statistics, they are growing by the day. It's becoming more common that people in aircraft are encountering drones, seeing drones or having near misses. So it has to be said, it has to be admitted by the regulators that so far, the regulations they've created have been largely ineffective. So we need to look at another way to try and increase the safety of manned aviation in the era of drones. Now, we can't just ban drones outright. That would just be ridiculous because it'd be sort of like banning cars when they were first invented. That all the people who had horses wanted to ban cars because, they were terrible, noisy, smoky, dangerous things. Well, I'm sorry, but drones are a part of our future. They're not entirely our future, but they are a part of our future. So we have to accept that they are going to exist and there will be a risk associated with them. Just as when you get in your car to drive to work or whatever, you accept the risk that you could be killed in a car accident. In America, over 30,000 people are killed every year in auto accidents. But people are still happy to jump in their car and drive wherever they want to go, aware of that risk and accepting that level of risk. You cannot eliminate risk. Certainly in aviation, you cannot eliminate risk, but you need a rule set, a regulatory framework that reduces risk to the bare minimum. So far, regulating drones hasn't done that. So how can we increase the safety of manned aviation in the era of drones? Well, I'm going to put a suggestion to you now. Now, I'm going to draw a bit of an analogy here. If you go to the beach and you see a sign like this, would you go swimming? Probably not. I mean, you could go swimming. You'd be legally entitled to go swimming. You could go swimming because you're allowed to, but it's not a good idea. You have the freedom to go swimming, but it is extremely high risk if you see a sign like this. So most sensible people would say, I'm not going to go swimming until that risk has gone away, or I'll go somewhere else where the risk is lower. If you do go swimming and you get eaten by a shark or a riptide takes you out, and it's been clearly posted that those risks are there, then you bear the burden of that. You bear the responsibility for making that decision. Now, this ties in very, very well with the situation we have with drones at the moment. Legally speaking, people flying drones are limited to a maximum altitude of 400 feet above ground, right? That's it. That's the ceiling. And if we assume that these people are playing by the rules, and let's be honest, the vast majority of people do play by the rules when flying their drones. There are millions of drone flights every year in the USA. How many incidents are reported? We're talking about tens or hundreds of incidents. So if you look at the percentage of the total drone flights, it's a very, very small number. But there will always be bad actors. We can't change that. There's always bad actors on the roads. There are people who speed. There are people who drive dangerously. We accept that when we get in our vehicle and drive to work. It's part of that risk profile I was talking about. So when it comes to drones, we have to accept that the regulations for drones will be obeyed by the vast majority of people, but there will always be bad actors who will ignore them. So we have to discount the bad actors because we cannot change them. They choose to break the rules on purpose or out of ignorance. Nothing we can do to stop that. But what about the people who are obeying the rules? The vast majority. How do we make life safer when we're interacting and flying when those people are using their drones? Well, here's what I suggest. We need to have a common sense attitude. Yeah, that's right. I'm using the C word. And this is a word that's, if you talk to someone who has a strong background in safety, they'll talk about the probabilities and the consequences and all that sort of stuff and mitigation, but they'll also talk about the common sense word. They'll use the word common sense because that is the key to safety. You can have all the rules in the world, all the regulations that you can think of, but ultimately it boils down to common sense. People have to look at something and make a decision based on what's happening at the time. And rules are a great guideline. In fact, I think it was somebody in World War II said, rules are for the obedience of fools and the guidance of wise men.
Sorry. Dead against the rules, Douglas.
The rules? They were written for the obedience of fools and the guidance of wise men. Remember?
And I think that's true even to today. So what I'm suggesting for general aviation is leave the drone flyers to their 400 feet and below, where they're legally entitled to be, and keep GA 500 feet and above. Now, in some countries, that is the law, that is the regulation. You may not fly below 500 feet unless taking off or landing or in a designated low-flying area. However, in other countries like the USA, you can fly below 500 feet so long as you keep a specified distance from people and I think property. I'm not sure. I don't know the FAA rules that closely. I don't live in the USA, but you can fly below 500 feet. But just as you can go swimming in the shark-infested waters, is that really a good idea? It may be convenient, but it is not safe now. It may have been safe 10 years ago before we had all these drones out there. It's no longer safe. The sharks have moved into the sub 400 foot airspace. And if you go swimming there, then you really have to accept the fact that you could have a problem. And if you don't want a problem, if you don't want to put the life of your passengers and yourself at risk, do not fly below 500 feet without good reason. And I would say to regulators now, if you've tried regulating drone operators and it really hasn't worked, let's face it, it really hasn't worked if the media is to be believed. As I said, the vast majority of people follow the regulations. But even when they're following the regulations, perhaps as in the Florida situation, then we still have manned aircraft operating below 500 feet. Now, the whole idea of the regulations as we have them is we have unmanned aviation up to 400 feet, 100-foot separation, and then manned aviation. If we do that, then we've got 100-foot. It's a barrier. It's a protective barrier between unmanned and manned aviation. So in that respect, if manned aviation sticks to the 500 and above and the unmanned sticks to 400 and below, there should be no more incidents. Now, you guys, the pilots of the world, have to take the positive, have to take the high ground on this one and say, right, we will not fly below 500 feet, even if it is inconvenient to fly higher, even if it costs us more on fuel, even if we cannot get such a good view of this wonderful coastline we're flying along. You have to make that decision. You have to be safe. As I say, it's common sense, and it's a mindset. It's a sort of frame of mind that you have to be in, fly safely. So don't fly with the sharks. Fly above the risk. Fly 500 above. And I say to the regulators, how about you put this into regulation? As I say, you've tried regulating the drone operators. They obey, but the regulations simply aren't working. So you need to talk to the manned aviation community. Put in a framework of regulation that makes it unlawful, illegal to fly below 500 feet in a manned aircraft, unless you are taking off or landing, which is why we have exclusion zones around airports where drones are not to be flown, because you can expect to find aircraft, manned aircraft below 500 feet around airports. So cleverly enough, the regulators have put exclusion zones around those. And if you want to fly below 500 feet, say you're an agricultural contractor, you need to do crop spraying, then you have to issue a NOTAM so that other airspace users, people with drones, will know you're going to be there. And of course, knowledge is important in safety. If they know you're going to be there, then they can fly somewhere else or do whatever is necessary to maintain that separation between manned and unmanned aircraft. But if you're just going to blindly go wading into the shark-infested waters, expect to be bitten. And don't complain when you are, because the risk profile of the airspace has changed dramatically. And if you don't take that into account, then your ignorance can contribute to the risk that is faced by yourself and your passengers. There you go. Now, I know a lot of pilots I've spoken to have really been angry when I've suggested this to them. Some have said to me, but it's our right to fly below 500 feet. These drone flyers, Johnny-come-latelys, they shouldn't be allowed in the air. To which I would say, yeah, maybe you're right at the moment. Certainly in the USA, you have a right to fly below 500 feet, providing you comply with some of the other restrictions. But I would say in America, you also have the right to bear arms. You have the freedom to own a firearm for personal defence, home defence and so forth. You can keep that gun in the bedside cabinet in case someone breaks into your house at night. You can defend yourself. You also have the right to take that 9mm Glock, hold it to your head and pull the trigger. There's no law stopping you from doing that. But I would not suggest that you exercise that right for very obvious reasons. Just as I would suggest you don't exercise your present right to fly below 500 feet for the same very obvious reasons. So that's my suggestion to GA. Play it safe, get out of the way, get up high. Just all you have to do is stay above 500 feet and your risks of not only encountering a drone but also bird strike reduce dramatically. Why would you not do that? Because I know I've seen it here in New Zealand. You are legally required to fly above 500 feet unless taking a full landing or in a designated low-flying area. Yet I consistently see helicopters and light aircraft flying below 500 feet. And they do so with impunity. The regulators don't seem to care. So instead of focusing on the drone community, who by and large are very law-abiding, they follow the regulations, why not focus on a community, a part of the community? I'm not saying all GA pilots are like this, but some are. Why not focus on the GA community and say, look, you have to take responsibility for your own safety. You can't just say it's all the drone flyers' fault. You've got to stay out of the, fly safely. You don't drive your car on the sidewalk, so don't fly below 400. That's my message to GA pilots and to regulators. Get out there, make it safer. We have to realise that the age of drones is upon us. And while we can do so much with drone regulations, inevitably regulations affecting manned aircraft also have to change because the risk profile of the national airspace has changed. You can't ignore it if you're a pilot. You've got to take that into account. Now, I'd like your feedback on this and perhaps share this video. Tell other people about this video if you're a pilot, tell your fellow pilots and get their feedback as well. I'd like a discussion going down here in the comments section on YouTube because to date we tend to have this division between the unmanned community and the manned community, and we need to get people talking, interacting, because together we can come up with some really good ideas that will make the airspace safer for everybody, and that's ultimately got to be the goal we're all striving for. Tell me what you think. And if you like this video, give it a thumbs up. If you don't, give it a thumbs down because it's all important. And if you want more input on this, then please subscribe to the channel. I do videos like this from time to time and I highlight various issues that are important both to the drone community and the manned aviation community. So have a look through the back videos on this channel and subscribe. There you go. Thanks for watching. I'll see you again soon.